This is SSN.
Story Studio Network.
You built your product, you launched your business, you saw success, money in the bank, a growing team, happy client. But now you feel like you're drowning. I'm here to help you get your head above water. I'm Lauren Goldstein. My clients call me the Business Doctor. Together, we'll diagnose the root cause of your business worries, whether it's your people, your process, or your product. We'll clarify your business needs so you can scale without the burnout. And then we will simplify it all so your business can do what it's designed to do, make a profit and an impact. Welcome to the Biz Doctor podcast. Welcome back to the show. I'm so excited about today's show because I have special guest Monica Laurence. On today's episode, we're going to talk about a revolutionary method for success in your life and your business. It's going to be an episode that you do not want to miss. We're going to jam on something that I am so fascinated by, the quantum field, and more specifically, how to use this amazing scientific energy to increase your level of success and fulfillment. Monica calls this quantum surfing. As I mentioned a few moments ago, it's a revolutionary method for success that Monica pioneered that combines quantum mechanics, neuroscience, and what she coined applied enlightenment. Spiritual principles grounded in science that are repeatable. The key word here being repeatable, and dare I say predictable. Imagine how extraordinary your life will be when you can create repeatable, predictable success. But before we explore today's juicy goodness, let me properly introduce my guest expert, Monica. Monica Laurence is a serial entrepreneur and conscious explorer with a passion for life. After decades as a leader in global enterprises, Hollywood entertainment, and Silicon Valley technology startups, Monica launched into hospitality with Tavola, her luxury boutique resort in the Fiji Islands. Monica is also the creator of Quantum Surfing, as I said, a method for success that teaches entrepreneurs, innovators, and next-gen leaders to combine neuroscience, applied enlightenment, and quantum mechanics to predictably create lucky outcomes and accelerate venture impact. Bottom line, Monica is going to help us successfully surf on the waves of life, and I'm so honored to have you on the show. Welcome.
Well, Lauren, it is just absolutely delightful to be here with you. Thank you so much. And I'm so fascinated by the work you do in your consulting practice and really transitioning business owners to be operating on the business rather than in the business. It's always such a key transition. And I love that you're helping all of us with that transition.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Operators to owners is one of my favorite things, which we can talk about later, but I'm really excited. So we met actually just a few weeks ago through a mutual friend, and I was just absolutely fascinated with what you do in the quantum field. And I know we're going to touch on 3 key points today. How about training yourself to be lucky, the beliefs and how they create your world. And of course, everyone matters and we all make a difference. But where I really want to start is I'd love for you to share your story of how you got into this fascinating work.
Well, I've really been curious throughout my life. I often joke that I'm the daughter of a fun-loving stewardess and a rocket scientist father. And so we'd have these dinner parties and always these curious conversations about the cosmos and the meaning of life. And so these are questions that I wondered about for a long time. And as I progressed through life and became successful originally in academia and then professionally, I started going back to some of these ideas about what life is really all about and how are we living it and what are the rules, the unconscious rules that we have by which we're living life. And are those rules serving us or could there be other ways? And so it was that natural curiosity that I started wondering about in the context of all my business pursuits, as well as just life in general, that eventually brought me to the ideas that I call quantum surfing.
Amazing. I love that. Stewardess and a rocket scientist. What a combination. Right? Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. I love this because I think as entrepreneurs, like our innate curiosity in things is how we change the world and bring ideas to life. And I know personally speaking, there's a lot that you see on the internet about manifesting or, how to use quantum science to your benefit. But something that really spoke to me is you talk about like the why of it so that it's actually predictable and it's not just something that's theory or esoteric or hard to like tangibly touch, which I thought was really interesting. So I think that could be a good segue into like our first topic of how we can train ourselves to be lucky.
Yeah, there is so much buzz right now about manifestation and what are the steps towards that. And on my own journey in these types of newfangled concepts and ideas, I was finding that sometimes the concepts worked and other times the concepts didn't work. And I was like, what's really at the heart? Okay, there might be something here, but how can we make this more predictable? And in order to understand that, I actually had to turn my attention to both neuroscience and quantum mechanics, and to look at a kind of set of experiences and then start to find the common threads within those experiences that would explain why these kind of uncanny things are happening. And so that led me to an understanding that our beliefs are really driving our thoughts, our behaviors, our feelings, and reinforcing our beliefs. And this was really illuminated for me in a TED Talk by UK neuroscientist Anil Seth. His talk is something catchy, like we're all hallucinating our reality.
Okay.
Which, how could you not be drawn to that particular title? And what he says is that your brain uses your beliefs as the operating system to decode all the signals that you receive from all of your senses. And so the decoding is only as good as the beliefs that you hold. So it's kind of this self-reinforcing cycle. And what most practices do that recognize this say, great, if that's true, then let's shift beliefs. Now, personally, I find it pretty hard to shift beliefs, even as a person who is naturally curious.
No kidding.
So in that cycle, I thought, interesting. Beliefs become thoughts, become behaviors, become feelings. I'm like, the behaviors, that's really interesting. That might be a place where you could kind of inject a shift. And so I found myself then reading books like The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg and figuring out how are our habits formed and how do they become embedded in our subconscious so that they just become a part of who we are? And then how can we desire to undo that and reset new patterns? So this combination then led me to focus on the idea of luck. And luck, as it turns out, is not something random. Luck happens because you have lucky behaviors. So you see, right? As soon as you start to inject behaviors, lucky behaviors, now you're starting to shift this cycle. So the research shows that there's a few behaviors that drive luck. And I just was fascinated by that research, and so decided to start right there.
So behaviors like that, I think is such a really interesting place to look, because so many of the things out there are talking about, you know, change this habit or change this belief or repeat this mantra. But as you said, you know, you have the beliefs and emotions that are all built around your perceptions. I mean, you said it much better than I just said it there, but I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about what those key behaviors are that you alluded to just a few moments ago that are really going to set yourself up to be more lucky.
Well, the reason I start with lucky behaviors is that it's fun. It's like it almost changes things instantly as soon as you start to practice these lucky behaviors. And so your brain isn't in the way. In fact, your brain quickly gets on board and says, oh my gosh, we're having a good time here, aren't we? And so it's shaping your beliefs in a new direction and giving you kind of these instant results. So those lucky behaviors, I stumbled upon them from research that was done a long time ago. And it was kind of a small and obscure article in which this gentleman wondered if it was possible to be predictably lucky. And so his way of detecting this was to invite people in to do a little experiment. And when they would arrive, he would have them be in a room with a newspaper and a piece of paper, a pencil, and also a timer. And so the proctor would say, now I'm curious. Thank you for coming in today. Do you consider yourself to be lucky or unlucky? And now if I had been a person in that situation, I would have said, I think I'm pretty fortunate. So, I'm excited to do this experiment with you. So he says, terrific, Monica. Here's what you need to do today. So I want you to count the number of photographs in this newspaper. And when you're done, just ring your bell, your timer, and then I'll come back. And you will be assessed. So what you're going to be assessed on is how quickly you count the photographs in the paper and how accurately you count the photographs. Okay, now, Lauren, if I had been doing this little test, I'll tell you exactly how I would have done it as a highly trained high achiever, right?
Of course.
So, right? Like we know this drill. So I'd go to page 1 on the newspaper and I'd look for the photographs. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Take my pencil, jot down number 5. All right. Flip to page 2. 1, 2, 3. Jot down 3. Now we're at 8. Okay. Flip to page 3. So I would continue in that fashion, counting photographs, jotting down how many per page and keeping a running tally so that at the conclusion, I could ring that bell and say, yes, I'm done. I've counted all the photographs. Okay.
100%. I would have done the same thing. Very meticulously, very logically. Yes, I'm on board. Yes.
And come to find out, that's not how a lucky person does it.
Of course.
So here's how a lucky person does this task. I'm
so intrigued. Tell me.
They go on page 1 and they see that there's 5 photographs. All right. And then they see, down there at the corner, there's a headline that says that there was a fire downtown. And one of the photographs is the fire engines pulling up to this, multi-alarm fire. And so the lucky person gets distracted by the article and starts reading, what happened? I'm so curious, right?
Curious. Yep.
And then says to themselves, oh my gosh, wait, hold on. I'm supposed to be counting the number of photographs in this paper. So, all right, let's keep going. So they flip to page 2, 1, 2, 3 photographs. But then they see on page 2 another headline. And this headline, huge, like covered most of the page, said, you can stop reading this newspaper. There are 43 photographs.
Shut the front door.
Right? Right.
Oh, wow.
So the lucky person would ring that bell and call the proctor back and say, wait, is this true? I read that there's 43 photographs of the paper. And they're like, oh yeah, that's true. You're done.
Oh my gosh.
I was really had to step back when I read this very tiny piece of research, because what struck me is that lucky people were going about a task in a completely different way. In fact, a way that us people who have been trained as high achievers would consider to be out of focus, to not be putting your attention to the task at hand, to being distracted, lots of different words that we could put to it.
Yeah.
But in fact, that's kind of their secret sauce. So it's like, what's happening there? Because I'm a bit of a data wonk. So I was like, that's really fascinating to me that lucky people were getting more quantifiably better results. They had 100% accuracy in the count of the photographs, and they did it in a fraction of the time that it would take you to go through the entire paper.
That's incredible. And I think what blows my mind is because I remember you sharing this story when we first met. And it still surprises me every time that you tell me this, because it's so counter to what we're taught in schools. Like, yes. It's absolutely counter. And actually the kids that probably are lucky and who are like over here doing their thing are actually punished because they're acting out or they're not focused, they're not present. And so it's really interesting to see how lucky behavior is, it seems, the complete opposite of what we've been taught, as you said, as high achievers. So fascinating.
I love that you're bringing up that school environment, because we're taught a method for success. And we can chat about it, but I call that method paddling. It's predictable. You can get from point A to point B. It's all your own energy, and it takes a lot of focus and concentration, and it can burn you out, as you know, because you spend time on mental health for entrepreneurs.
I do, yeah.
But that is a method that we're being taught. And this method that I'm sharing, that I'm so excited to share, I call it surfing, because it's not the same method. So going back to this research, this little article says, gee, come to find out, it is actually possible to see that there's behavioral differences between lucky and unlucky people. And those primary behaviors fall into 4 categories. The first is, as you might guess from the language we've been using so far, is that lucky people are open and curious. Yes. They're just fascinated by their world. They're present in their world. So they're not overly focused. They're not pushing away other influences because they're hyper-focused on the goal at hand. The next is that they're resilient, that they just tend to see life and the curveballs that it's throwing as interesting and unique opportunities. They just have a different perspective on all the things that others might say, oh, I can't deal with this because it's all going haywire.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody once told me, which actually goes perfectly hand in hand with this, and it changed my perspective of this is happening for you instead of this is happening to you.
Yes. Yes. 100%. That's related to one of the lucky behaviors called positive expectations. And if you believe that everything's just going your way, that it is happening for you, then you're more likely to have things go your way. It's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, I also love to throw in the caveat there that it's not to be Pollyanna or like in a denial mode. You need to be realistic, right. Actually understand the nature of what you're dealing with. But you have the gift of being able to look at situations from so many different perspectives. And when you are able to do that, that allows you to see ways through that weren't really available to you before you were taking that perspective. And then finally, the fourth lucky behavior is lucky people trust themselves.
Oh.
And when I started thinking about this, I'm like, how is it that people trust themselves? And I kind of went on this journey of looking at people who do trust themselves. Like, how is it? And what I found is that people who trust themselves, they tap their intuition.
Ah.
And there's a sense of alignment that they have with what's right for them. So in quantum surfing, I spend a fair amount of time on really honing intuition as your connection to consciousness, and then using that in a way that is applied, to up-level your life and your business. So these 4 lucky behaviors are just fun to experiment with, bring very quick and uncanny results, which puts you on this kind of path and journey of discovery. And then for myself, what I also throw in as a 5th lucky behavior is playfulness. Because when we show up in a place of joy and delight and treasuring being with others and enjoying their company, that puts out an energy, that establishes an energy in teams especially, that can help us go the distance together, even when everything isn't going our way.
I love that so much. And I see that a lot in my business and the work that I do with entrepreneurs is like when you're on the entrepreneur roller coaster, as I call it, and you're having like a down moment and we think that the solution is being more serious or doing more things or something like that. But actually in reality, what I've found and what I advise my clients is to actually stop, take a moment, go do something fun, like shake it off a little bit and like just really get present, because so much of like what we're doing, if you're like in that tunnel vision, then you cut off what could potentially be coming to help you. And I remember I was having a challenge in my business and my coach was like, what's the like number one thing that you love to do for fun that you could go do in this moment? And it had just rained. And I said, I love jumping in puddles. Yes, I'm like in my late 30s, but I love jumping in puddles to this day. And you can like, you will, if I'm driving, I'm like the Geico pig that's like, wee, like literally I will drive through puddles. It's hysterical. But anyway, and so he was like, go do that. And I went and did that. And literally the next phone call I got on, which was just a connection call, ended up being a $12,000 call.
Wow.
And like, I got like a new client and it was completely unexpected, magical result that I completely tied to the fact that I went and got out of my own way and went and jumped in a mud puddle and had fun and just like opened myself up to whatever needed to come in. So I love those principles.
Well, that's exactly what people who are enrolled in quantum surfing start to discover. They take a break, just like you took. They engage in a lucky behavior and they come back and then something uncanny happens. Like that in our cultural narrative, we don't have an explanation. It's still difficult to fathom how going and jumping in mud puddles resulted in your next call producing $12,000 in revenue.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. And I think also the last principle that you were talking about of trusting yourself, I think that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with. And actually, I talked with one of my other guest experts, Hillary Weiss, about this and imposter syndrome and how prevalent it is to not trust yourself because you're like in this gap of like not really knowing, but doing your best. And so I think that's a really amazing principle and muscle to build that intuition, to build evidence in your favor to trust yourself.
I've found that there's a really simple way to get yourself on to that path of trusting yourself. So I'll share it in case you want to give it a whirl yourself. Yes. All right. So years ago, I also was working with a coach and he was in Israel and I was in California. And at the conclusion of our first session together, he asked me, Monica, when do you feel to meet next? And I thought, what an odd way to ask that question. I chalked it up to a language difference. Like Obviously there's just a language difference here. So I did what every competent exec and leader does. I checked my very, very busy calendar. Yep. And I thought to myself, well, I want to keep these coaching sessions on track at a usual pace so that I am gleaning the effectiveness of them. So I don't want to allow too much time to go by. So when do I have a slot that will fit? So I proposed like in 10 days' time.
Okay.
And he replied, wonderful. Is that when you feel to meet next? And I was like, oh my gosh, it wasn't a language issue. And so I said,
oh my goodness.
I'm sorry. I don't know what that means. Are you truly asking me, when do I feel to meet? And he says, yes. I said, I don't know how to feel when to meet. He said, well, Monica, just try. So Lauren, I was like, all right, I don't know how to do this, but let's see, give it a whirl. So okay. I just went to this place. I tried to center myself. I tried to feel something. And finally I said to him, okay, I got a glimmer of a feeling. Okay. I don't wish to meet in 10 weeks. I don't feel to meet in 10 weeks. I feel to meet in 10 days. I feel to meet in 2 weeks.
Okay.
He says, wonderful. Then we'll meet then. And I said to him, I want to be perfectly clear. I do not want to meet in 2 weeks. I want to meet in 10 days.
Okay.
But if you're asking me, when do I feel to meet? Then the answer to that question is 14 days, and I can't even tell you why. He said, wonderful. Okay. I'll see you then. Now, he gave me such a gift, Lauren. I actually call this method of deciding sense decisioning.
Oh.
So
tell me more.
What happened then is that 10 days later came, and I was hectic and other things had shifted around on my calendar. And when 14 days later came, it was really perfect timing. I had to kind of marvel at it. I was like, that's interesting. So, because I'm kind of an experimenter, I was like, let me try applying this in other places.
Oh, yes.
And so I started doing that in all sorts of places. Like I had to go to a meeting one day that was across the Golden Gate Bridge, and it could have taken me anywhere from an hour to an hour and 45 minutes. Like with traffic, it's just unclear. And so we become dependent on our apps to tell us, how heavy the traffic is and when to leave.
Yep.
And so on this particular morning, I was so consumed with whether or not I would leave on time for this rather important meeting that it was kind of disrupting my ability to focus on the other tasks at hand. So I finally said to myself, I said, Monica, enough. You are just going to set the intention that you will feel to go when it's time to go. So I just waited till I had a feeling, which is, a couple hours later. And all of a sudden I got this sort of like zing feeling. And I was like, oh, okay, it's time to go. And I hopped in the car and I probably fueled on the way, and I go across the Golden Gate and I pull up to my appointment in the North Bay. And when I turned off the car, the clock ticked to precisely the moment I was supposed to arrive.
Wow. I just got goosebumps. That's incredible.
So there's this, I do it now routinely. I just ask, what do I feel to do? When do I feel to go? It's these feeling questions. And there's this sense that we have, it's intuition, which is your connection to consciousness. I call it a lost sense of perception, because we have no cultural narratives that tell us that this is even possible. And yet you can start trying it right now. When we leave this call, just ask yourself, when do I feel to do such and such? And wait until you have a feeling about it. And then notice what happens when you follow that guidance.
I just love this because, I've been going through, I'm a personal development, also data junkie myself. And so I love learning. I have like an insatiable thirst for, you know, all things neuroscience. That's where we overlap and, why we do the things that we do. And the older I get, the more I'm like, God, this like sense of like driving towards something, like I want to be more in flow. And but I was raised as a high performer too, and it was a lot of go go go, do like structure and things like that. So it's a lot of, as Joe Dispenza says, he has a book that it's like the science of, oh, no, breaking the habit of being yourself. That's what it is. And so a lot of my journey has been unlearning this very, if you will, Western way of living where it's like very go, go, go and not very intuitive. And so the more I lean into it, the more I experience what you were talking about. And I was just yesterday, my father was in town visiting. And like for the first time in a long time, I didn't really have a plan. Like I knew what we were gonna do, and I was just gonna see how the day unfolded. And so we went to the Capitol here in Austin, and like we just happened to arrive right when the tour was starting. Like literally on the dot.
Love
right?
it.
And
yes.
like I kind of set the intention that it might be nice to go on a tour, but I wasn't connected to it. And I was like, oh, look at that, Dad. The tours are at 1:30 and 2:00. And we were there at 1:30. And it's just like part of the work that I do with entrepreneurs and you do with entrepreneurs is like undoing this connection to doing. Like, yes, you do need to do certain things in your business and be in committed action, but there's also this certain sense of being and being in flow and just like listening to the pulse of your business, the pulse of yourself, and like having a different relationship with time, with work, with business, etc. So I'm loving all that we're talking about right now.
That's a beautiful example with your father just arriving right on time for that tour. Clearly surfing in flow. It's so special when we're doing that with people we treasure.
Yeah, it is. And it's also, somebody once told me that if you're living in anger, you're living in the past. If you're living in stress, it's because you're living in the future. But if you're in the present, then you're in flow. And that's like the present is the only time that you can make things happen. And so, trying to be more present, and it just makes magical things happen, like showing up and meeting you. So we could have this conversation that's like the amazing nuggets that we've talked about, I'm sure going to have ripple effects to anyone that listens. And so I love the magic of what you're talking about with how to intentionally be lucky and live your life. And how, beliefs create your world. And maybe this is something that you can touch on a little bit. Something I learned not that long ago in an emotional intelligence leadership program that I did is the sense of we're taught you do something to have something to be something. But in reality, it's you be something to do something to have something. So it like starts with that state of being and not the state of doing, which is kind of going back to that belief system that you were talking about.
Yeah, it definitely dovetails nicely with the belief system. It also dovetails nicely with this sense of being present that you were speaking to. It's interesting is that there's this way of, it's the be, do, have, right? Which is the mantra that really relates to that. When you operate in this quantum sphere, which is what we eventually get to by the time we're into Quantum Surfing 3, the third course in the series, you know that you're making it all happen. And you don't apply your energy anymore by this sense of I'm uncertain whether or not I'm making it all happen. And so when you come to life that way, with that uncertainty, you have to strive and work very hard. But when you eventually have the confidence to know that you're making it happen, what you find yourself is in the position of watching the story unfold and appreciating the beauty of that story. And I don't recall the film, the moment, but it was really a poignant film in which the men in the family had this gift of time travel.
Oh.
And it would be passed through the patriarchal line. And the youngest recipient of that gift eventually stops time traveling. Because what he realizes is that it is all, he is creating all of that. And now he can release the anxiety around, is it going to happen? And instead really participate in the joy of the journey. And that's foundational, this shift. There's a mantra that we use in quantum surfing called, it's to commit to the joy of the journey. Really don't miss out. Like, you're going to get there. You're making it happen, but take a slightly different shift in your energy so that you can be present to this. So that in 5 years' time, you're not looking back and telling the story only, but that in the moment, you're also living the story. You know that feeling you get when like 5 years go by and you almost want to go back because now that you know how it ends, you want to like, oh, now I can actually savor those moments. And before I was completely stressed out. Right?
Yeah.
And so this recognition that you're creating it all and you can savor the moments is so very valuable.
So valuable. And I feel like that ties in really nicely to the idea that a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people in general feel that there is this moment where you're going to get to the mountaintop and you'll like have arrived. But in reality, to your point, it's always the journey. We're always growing. Our businesses are always like this living, breathing entity that's changing. And the culmination is actually not some goal or relationship or thing. It's the journey and enjoying that journey, being present to the journey. Because if you've arrived, then like, not to be, morbid, but like chances are then your time on this earth has come to an end. Because you're not growing. But I think what you're talking about is about the last part about everyone matters and we all make a difference. Is that where you were going with that?
Yeah, for me, what I'm really jazzed about is teaming with people to make their dreams come true. And to do that by unleashing their personal genius. When I meet people, I love to discover what it is about them that is unique and special and exceptional. And then to amplify that and to give them the tools to step into the truth and the potential of that kind of that rare alchemy, that rare combination of attributes that only they have. They're the only one. And so this is what I'm really excited about in quantum surfing, because I'm drawn to these ideas because I want to look around our world in 20 years and see a world where people have been free, that they've become free to really be who they are, to create in ways that they could never imagine was possible, rather than what, unfortunately, which is so often the case, of feeling different in some way and then feeling like you don't fit in. And then as a result of not fitting in, feeling that you're sidelined. But, even the people who appear to be fitting in, they feel the same way, which tells you that the model that we're in is not really nurturing us. And I come to a conclusion that model comes from beliefs that are outdated. that it comes from a cultural narrative that has been handed down for generations and that is based around this notion of paddling, working really, really hard, and kind of towing the line on conventional expectations in order to get to where you're going. But there is another model. And when we start to understand the true nature of quantum, which is our quantum physicists have been telling us about it for 100 years now, that the world is energy, everything is energy. And yet, is there anything in our high-performing methodology that relates to energy except to applying it for more work? Of course not, no.
No.
So just this small shift starts to tap you into a greater potential to, rather than paddle through waves in the quantum field, to honestly learn how to shape your beliefs so that you can get up on a wave and actually ride it, which is a completely different experience and a lot more fun and doesn't take as much energy. So if you imagine that you see someone on a board and they're surfing, like, that's exhilarating. And when you see someone who's in their genius and they're just really enjoying life because they are able to create in this space, that's just like a surfer. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful to watch. So everyone does matter because no two people are alike. And if you're not even sure how to matter for yourself, then start to matter for others. Right?
Yes.
So, like, if you have the opportunity to interact with someone, just do your best to leave them happier than when you arrived. Just start there.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that. And that's actually a perfect segue because we're about to wrap up, which makes me so sad because I could talk to you about this for hours. But I know you've mentioned quantum surfing a few times. I would love for you to share with the listeners about, really what that is and a little bit more about how they can connect with you and sink their teeth into more of this quantum goodness, because this episode was beyond so many golden nuggets and takeaways that I'm going to implement. But I want to make sure that the listeners can actually connect with you and really dive deeper if they want to. So if you want to share a little bit about quantum surfing and how they can connect with you.
Super. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Of course.
Yeah, I have been living these principles steadily for a decade now. And I had every intention of sharing them for some time, but I was really quite absorbed with building my own businesses. And in that particular journey, I was eventually led to the Fiji Islands, where I purchased a small boutique resort called Tavola. And I use that as a place to welcome visionaries and creative entrepreneurs to get off the grid and rejuvenate. During the pandemic, I found myself there alone. And so no guests were able to come in and out because the borders were closed. And I thought, well, this is a fine time to actually put together all of the principles that I've been using myself to create businesses and start to share them. So that's how I spent my pandemic. It was really launching quantum surfing.
I love that. I love that. You made the most out of your time.
and unfortunately, I really did need that kind of solitude to do it as well.
Yeah.
So you can find quantum surfing on quantumsurfing.com, on both the website and on Instagram. You can find Tavola in Fiji at tavolafiji.com, also on Instagram and the website. And you can find me also at monicalaurence.com. But the one that we've been talking about today primarily is quantumsurfing.com. So yeah, head on over there.
I love it. And Correct me if I'm wrong, but you do one-on-one work as well as I believe quantum surfing is getting turned into a choose your own adventure, do it on your own time kind of product in the near future as well.
Yes, you're exactly right. So to date, I've offered quantum surfing as cohorts, which are like virtual live group sessions. And I've had more and more people asking if they can please just get started immediately. So I am now making the quantum surfing courses available in a self-paced, choose your own adventure mode, as you say. And then when people can feel free to join or not a live group cohort when that also comes up. So they can really deepen their practice of quantum surfing and then work with me one-on-one if they choose to do so. So lots of different options.
I love that. I love that so much. And I love how much we overlap with the neuroscience, with the, helping entrepreneurs, business owners, like really uncover their gifts. I do it, of course, with like their team and like, what are your strengths and building the perfect team around you. You do it on a life holistic view, which I think is wonderful and so complimentary. And I'm so honored to have had you on and have this chat because I think it's, especially in our day and age, this is such an important conversation and shift in beliefs and how we go through life, because I just see how much burnout and the doing is taking away from us really being fulfilled and connecting and living. So I'm a big fan of your work and so honored to have had you on. You're very welcome.
It's a tragedy when our best and our brightest are burning out. And it's urgent. We really need everyone. And
we do.
So yeah, you and I both feel the same way, that it's time to get people in balance and set them free to be their most beautiful selves.
Yes, I love that. Freedom is actually my word of the year. I don't know if anybody else does a word of the year, but freedom is mine. Well, I love this. Like I said, I could talk to you for hours, but I want to say thank you again.
Thank you.
Reminder, you're welcome. Reminder, you can connect with her at quantumsurfing.com, quantum surfing on Instagram, and you're going to have to say your Fiji resort one more time.
Tavola, Tavola. It means table in Italian, which is our favorite place to gather with very special people.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So that's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening in. It's because of listeners like you that we create these episodes. I'd love to hear from you and your biggest takeaways, so make sure that you're following along. Go ahead and subscribe. Tag me on Instagram at It's Lauren Goldstein or LinkedIn, or wherever you hang out on the interwebs. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to the Biz Doctor podcast. You're probably wondering what your next steps are. So here are some options for you. No matter what, head to the show notes or to my website at goldenkeypartnership.com. That's where you'll find links to do a diagnostic deep dive with me and my team. This deep dive will help us identify what is really holding you and your business back from more profitability, impact, and sustainable growth. After that, register for our next workshop. I host them often, and it's a great way to interact with me in a virtual room and get your questions answered. All of that info is on our website at goldenkeypartnership.com. Finally, if you love the Biz Doctor podcast, I'd be grateful if you share it with your friends and colleagues on social media or give us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast.
This is Story Studio Network.